Welcome to Navigating the Scoring Labyrinth, Notion's blueprint for adapting data science models to changing sales processes. There are maybe two main themes in the Coalesce session agendas that I've been able to pick out so far. One of them is how to navigate complexity as your business grows and changes. And the other is how to drive measurable business impact and revenue via your data team. This session is about both of those things. I'm Jeff Sloan. I'm a senior data community advocate at Census, but this is the last you're going to hear from me for a little bit. I'm joined by Jessica Zhang, a data science manager at Notion, who is going to be able to talk to us today about how she built and evolved a lead score across time as Notion has grown and changed. And with that, without further ado, welcome to the stage, Jessica Zhang.
Thank you, everyone, for the welcome. My name is Jessica Zhang, and I'm here to walk you through Notion's journey of leveraging a evolving data science scoring model to improve the sales prospecting process. So first off, a quick intro. I started my career in the B2C consumer sector, focusing on business analytics to drive user acquisition. And in the past decade, my focus has been on go-to-market data science in 3 PLG companies, Twilio, Slack, and currently I'm a data science manager at Notion. And a quick spiel about Notion: it is a collaboration software that allows the end users to create shared docs, manage their project, and organize their conversations and knowledge in one place. So there's no tribal knowledge in a company or a organization. And we also recently launched a number of new features like AI Writer to really, to enable and help users to leverage this tool like Lego pieces to cater to your specific use cases. So with that said, here's the agenda today. There's a lot to cover. And before I get to the scoring model methodology, I'd love to give a quick overview on the PLG PLS ecosystem and how the scoring model fit into this bigger picture, as well as the system and data flow that evolves around it, because they are often, in my opinion, overlooked and plays an important role here. So first off, this is a quick primer on the PLG to PLS flywheel. The first 4 arrows are the classic self-serve funnel, from workspace creation, activation, upgrade to paid retention. And this self-serve funnel is pretty common in all 3 companies I worked at, Twilio, Slack, and Notion. And I think the beauty of that is the freemium product offers a chance for the end users to experience the product firsthand and create a very strong community of product champions. So this way, our enterprise side of the business has a huge self-serve pool to tap into. And also because we have a huge self-serve pool to tap into, that comes with a really good business question of how can we prioritize our workflow? How can we bring efficiency and our sales reps are doing a ton of manual work to go into systems like Stripe, NetSuite, Salesforce, and sometimes they even search Crunchbase to see if there's any funding information for a company that they are prospecting into. So that's why scoring becomes more and more important, because how can we have a standard heuristic for our sales team to leverage on a day-to-day basis so they save time, they can trust this system, and then they can start their day by like, all right, those are the top 5 companies that I'm going to talk to. And besides that, I think this also really helps align with the go-to-market strategy. And we're talking about what kind of personas, what kind of industries, what kind of use case scenarios that product marketing can drive the narrative of the product. And then this way, we can align with the sales team on the selling narrative as well. And this also gives opportunity for the whole system, data, go-to-market to collaborate together and build more alignment. So I just said a lot of words, and so I figure it's easier to visualize like what are the components in this space as well. And as you can see, we at Notion and also at Slack, like Salesforce is the centralized CRM for us. And at Notion, we leverage Fivetran to load all those third-party data, like from Salesforce, from Stripe, NetSuite, and a bunch of other third-party tools into Snowflake, our data warehouse, and also our product usage events are also stored there, and that is where all the data modeling magic happens in step 3. And we also leverage dbt for the data pipeline scheduling aspect of it. And once the score gets refreshed on a nightly basis, the updated score is populated into Salesforce through Census pipeline. So it becomes a very coherent process over time. And it's also, as a data scientist, I was able to work pretty straightforward, work around those systems pretty straightforwardly. So now this is the interesting part. We started the sales prospecting process about 3 years ago, and that is also when Notion started to transition into more of, start to have the mindset of how can we leverage sales to scale the growth. And when we started 3 years ago, all the data were organized and specifically all the tables were organized in the Notion Workspace level and Notion Workspace user level. So that influenced how we define a PQL. And PQL stands for Product Qualified Leads. And it was defined on the user level. The scores were also a very straightforward point system score, like your decision maker title, your 5 points, your digital native company, your 10 points, and you have some advanced usage of the product, that's another few points. And on the daily basis, account executives can receive those newly created product qualified leads in Salesforce through those, the Census and dbt aspect of it. So they can look into the list of newly created leads and then reach out and start working on them. However, and it worked really well for about 6 months until the issues start to arise. First off, we realized Notion's users are across the globe. So it creates confusion on when, Bob from EMEA used Notion, but the same company, their Americas branch also used Notion. Which sales rep should own the relationship and the conversation? And the second is, the flaw of this design is that the more users, the more employees in the company, that means more power or more PQLs there will be simply because they have more employees. And so that's why a very traditional historic or classic PQL model is not a good fit for Notion's product as a whole, because we actually realized that within a company, people can use Notion to take personal notes, so they create a workspace. But there's also maybe the finance department wants to have a workspace, they create a department. So it becomes a mixed use cases. So this is a iterative process. So that's why as we continue the conversation, we landed on where things are now. As you can see on the top left, in the green circle, we now organize the data onto the company domain level. So say a company branding company, say Disney, they may have like, even sometimes a couple hundred workspaces, but then we had visibility into like, okay, what are some of the workspaces are multiplayer versus some workspaces are just personal usage, people take notes. And this is where, and then because of that, we also now organize our sales team based on the company size. This way and then the company size play a huge role in terms of product adoption as well. And because of this newly created sales motion, that's why we did a lot of rethinking, and now the scoring is on the account level. And on the account level, we know what is their wall-to-wall ratio, what is their adoption velocity, and a lot of other metrics. And to supplement to the account level, domain level score, we also supplement a super useful list of contact, we call it contact, and they are power users, decision makers, billing contact, or people who visited pricing page, frankly. So this gives a more relevant pool for the sales reps to tap into, and this is also based on a lot of interviews with the people on the field. So it's a combination of art and science here. And now I want to touch on the scoring components very quickly. I've built similar models at all three companies, and every company has their own unique, I want to say, configurations of how departments are organized or how resources are assigned. So that's why I don't think there is a silver bullet or a scoring model that can fit all of your needs. But I do want to list all the commonly used data features or commonly that we experimented in different companies, and what they have in common are all like firmographics, demographics, and product usage. And what we noticed is also, for example, like employee growth year over year, last funding round industry play a huge role in terms of the product market fit. So, and this is also aligned with our sales team's intuition as well, and along with those interviews, I realized different reps, they have their own different style, and they are some may be more familiar with the healthcare industry versus others. And the product usage in the middle is pretty straightforward. Penetration, adoption velocity, what is the MAU, monthly active editor, and I think, like for Slack, maybe it's more like how many messages we send, and for Notion is how many blocks. So we experimented a lot of those product usage, and demographics is also an interesting one that, even though, and I got different feedbacks. For example, like the sales, the BDR, SDR may have a different angle with the AEs, and yeah, like while the decision makers are the people who the personas that they all want to talk to, but sometimes they realize that the product champions, the people who actually use the Notion, and yeah, frankly, like business decision makers are in the meetings all day, so they may not actually have a lot of product usage, but if the grassroots are more like, hey, we really need this product, that helps with the selling as well for product like Notion and Slack. So, and then, yeah, like we usually also would organize, we would pick run A/B test as well. We would choose a few pilot few AEs to be in the pilot, and then we would get their feedback, and then that is how we roll it out and do the enablement as well. And lastly, change management. So scoring model alone can create a lot of confusion. And when I started my career, I always thought like, wow, the methodology, the previous slides, is really awesome, and this is where I can drive that 5% incremental conversion rate, and that's awesome. But actually, the longer I work in this industry, the more I realize the communication and the enablement are very important, and to build that trust, to include the sales team, the marketing team into this discussion process, and then show them like, hey, we run this pilot, and then this is what we noticed, what worked, what didn't work, and that's why we're going to change the way how it goes in the next phase. So getting people's buy-in, getting sales leadership's buy-in is really important, because I've actually been in situations where I have to divide one score into two simply because the organization, their motion is different from the scoring motion. Like they actually need multiple signals instead of just one, so I have to break it into two. And yeah, organizational alignment. I think like sales team are on the field, so they have a lot of great intuition. And how do you translate their intuition about like what kind of keywords resonate with the people who are buying it? What kind of personas are dealing with what kind of pain point? And then translate that into the use cases with marketing, and then that also translate into like, okay, let me experiment what kind of data features I should put into the scoring models. So that is how you build a more cohesive conversation. And lastly, yeah, sales systems and process. Just now I showed this 4-step circle. I think that also has been a lot of iterations at both Notion and Slack. Simply because like sometimes business technology is like the last step to be invested as the whole company, especially for product led. So as a data science person, I often also have to advocate for like, okay, this is why we need to refactor the census pipelines. This is why we need to, improve the scoring models by building X, Y, and Z. So yeah, so with that, I would like to open it up to questions. Thank you.
We're definitely going to take some audience questions, but I have one question for you that you touched over, you glossed over it, but I'm really curious to dive deeper. So every sales rep has their own style.
Yes.
How did you get them to change their behavior and actually adopt the scoring model to change, to prioritize these leads accordingly?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's like it's a really great learning process for me. I even learned some reps. So to give you a more specific example, I even learned one rep that he is just really knows the ecosystem of the cryptocurrency companies, crypto companies. So he would even go to those conferences and talk to the prospect there. And then, so I would actually interview him and say, hey, what are some of the anecdotal stories you had? What are the sparks that you had with those conversations? So to get their trust with me, like I'm listening to what really matters to them, and the other person says, hey, there's a tenure really matters, because for a Notion workspace, if they just joined, they're not really ready to buy it. But if they've been with Notion for like more than 3 years and still just paying 5 seat, they're not a good selling prospect. So I have to understand where they're coming from, and then actually I would provide analysis to see like, oh wow, you make sense. Oh, actually no, there's some specific niche reasons. So this way we got the buy-in from the reps, and then we also presented those findings to the sales leadership, because to get their buy-in. So that's how like the whole process started. And then we also have like Slack channels where they can ask questions. We would have iterations and talk about the learnings, feedback, and next steps at like a sales all hands. So there's a lot going behind.
Definitely. Wow. Okay, we have plenty of questions. So I saw your hand first jump up when I really jumped in. So you please take it away and hold the mic like that too.
Great presentation, by the way. Really liked the way you broke it down. A couple questions. Are you serving up your recommendations to your sales team based on like expected probability of closing and like CLTV within Salesforce? Are you also embedding yourself into like the outbound sales motions as well to try and serve up warmer leads to them? How does that work?
Yeah, so we calculate a probability to close score, and that is how we generate like a score from 1 to 100 and send it into the Salesforce account object. We actually also pair that with it's a logistic scoring model because it's easier to explain to the non-technical users. So I actually pair that up of like, a score of 80 means they just got funding in the last 12 months and employee size increased by 20% year over year, and they have like 80 MAU, and out of which, more than half of them were creating docs. So this way they can contextualize and start talking to different personas in different ways. And in terms of the outbound motion, so right now we have every quarter the revenue operation, the sales ops people would actually look through all the account and refresh the reps book of business, which is usually like a couple hundred accounts, and then they would actually tier up all of those accounts based on both the score and some other parameters. So they call it tiering on top of the account score. So this way, for the outbound motion, our sales reps can save time instead of like looking through all the accounts and figure out what's the story to sell. They can just pick like top 5 that are most likely to close, and they have the most information around. And so this way. And usually, like every quarter, we would also do a retro with the team by different regions. So this way, they can tell us like, give us more learnings from their side as well.
No, it takes a village to implement these things. I'm glad that you got so many evangelists across the team. I'm sure product marketing was helping you with some of the copywriting as well.
Yes.
And enablement to keep your people appraised of all the things they can upsell. One last question: Are you currently using similar scoring mechanisms to help the product team kind of prioritize feature enhancements as well? Because that's one thing where I've seen a lot of product orgs fall flat. Where it's not very democratic.
So on my team, there is a data scientist. They actually he actually goes to like all the sales forecast meetings on a weekly basis by different region and collect feedback on like, hey, why certain deals delayed, and also on every opportunity, there's also like qualitative notes on like, the reason why they didn't close is because XYZ and what are the feature requests, and then we synthesize all of those information and send it back to the product team. Yeah.
Right. I'm going to cross the room because it's going to be easier for me to take it back to my seat, take it around town. Here.
I'd be interested to know how you do the account mapping. So I've done a similar problem recently and found out one of our accounts has, I think, 12 different email subdomains for their users. Is it just a manual, tedious process, or have you found some way to do that in bulk?
Do you mean by parent-child domain, or?
Parent-child is definitely a problem we've dealt with. Yeah. With like, I know you had mentioned the European division and the North American division, but even presumably with a Notion, you could have, let's say this single email domain maybe that represents the main corporate users, but then they invite subcontractors or something like that. Got it.
Yeah, like so right now, to simplify the sales process, we are dividing the domains based on their headquarter country, unless they specifically say like, hey, we actually want to be aligned with the billing country, and that is how the reps are assigned. And we are in the process to figure out, like if there are a lot of contractors, how are we going to use it? Because certain companies definitely use Notion in a very creative ways by inviting a ton of guests, or they are consultant companies and they actually work with different type of companies as well. So usually that right now that's handled case by case. But I think once the company scale, will need to be more systematically.
Thank you for your question. Let's see. Oh, peel back here.
Can you say a little bit more about what kind of feedback loops do you have? How do you deal with like false positives, false negatives? How do you improve your model?
Yeah, so at a high level, we, like from a qualitative standpoint, we have both Slack channels and open Notion Q&A doc so people can chime in into those surface areas to ask us like more ad hoc questions. And on a quarterly basis, we do evaluate on like what is the predicted score, because we also take snapshot of the score growth on a daily basis and upon their being contacted, and what is the conversion rate a couple of months later, because that's usually like bulk of the sales cycle, sales conversation happens. So we would compare and be like, oh, okay, if a score above 75, they did convert or reach like stage 2+, awesome. But there are certain conversations that happens and we learn. And I think this is something that scoring model cannot solve, is that maybe sometimes timing is not right. Maybe sometimes the persona is not there. It probably points to a direction, but oftentimes we realized is we need in the client side, we need both the product champion and also the executive leadership level support. And sometimes the multi-stakeholder natured sales conversation needs to happen in multiple threads in order for this to happen as well. So that creates an opportunity for us to revisit those cases that like, especially high score and didn't close, what's the reason why? Okay, great, we need to create other relationships. Or low score, but somehow created, what happened? Oh, it's because they probably had someone interested before that person left the company, so the interest level dropped, but then there's a new leader comes in and they use Notion from another organization, so that's what the conversation picked up from here. So, or the new budget, and frankly, the last couple of years, because of the macro environment, it just all the companies are becoming very more prudent than before in terms of budget. So that's why I think it introduces noise to the scoring model predictability as well.
So I love the Slack channel idea for feedback and the quarterly reviews. Curious, I think it is hard for sales reps to sometimes understand it's not like a deterministic model. It's not like rules based. So curious if you've developed a mechanism for like a threshold for when you incorporate the feedback versus kind of let it go, and how you communicate that, like without kind of chasing the edge cases or feedback ad nauseum that they might be coming to you with in the Slack channel.
Yeah, so. When we just started the Slack channel, it was everybody was like, hey, check out this case. Why is that? Oh, it turns out the enrichment data was outdated. Like at the beginning of the Slack channel, we actually had questions from all directions. I think over a course of the quarter, it actually started to become more themed. We realized, oh, it's probably because of, it's probably because like usage data seems off, or enrichment data seems off, or maybe the timing is off. So I think like once I want to say first is to organize those conversations in different themes, and then second is have that touch point, like more frequent touch points. At the beginning, I actually would go into those sales forecasting calls in person and listen to their feedback, and so that's why like it becomes also a known, like, hey, we can only predict 80% of the times right. So again, like it's an art and science combination, like trust your intuition too. So there's also a lot of like training and enablement. Education goes to all the new reps that's being onboarded when they just started using as well.
Time check. Do we have time for one more question? Yeah, we can do one more question. Let's pass this one on down, if you don't mind.
So specifically on the note of like art and science, how do you measure the impact of having the model then, if there's not really like those cut and dry lines of how people are using it and when they're using it. So yeah, curious about that.
Totally. When we were building the model, we have the confusion metrics, we have the F1 score, precision recall, and for this type of models, definitely we want to optimize on the recall, if I can nerd out, because it's the conversion rate is more on the single digit. So we know going into this type of work, we know like there's only so much we can optimize for. So that's why like if we can be right 75% of the time, we're good. So that's why like when we build a model, we have that in mind, and we've always communicated it's like this is an iterative model. Please, we give you the direction of like top 10% of your book, but for those 10 accounts of the top 10%, then please, proceed. Trust your gut, trust your intuition, because there's a lot of like maybe timing is different. Maybe the budget of every company is different. So like I think setting proper expectations is also another key piece to it, which is like educating the reps of like, hey, you can trust the scoring model at a high level, but how would you interact with each deal? That's your style. Like trust your gut.
All right, so that takes us to time. I want to say a huge thank you to all of you for attending, and a huge thank you to Jessica for sharing all of her insights with us today. Let's give her a round of applause. And we are